My brother had died on the West Coast. I was getting ready to catch an airplane, of course, to go to the funeral and help prepare it. And I think I asked something like, "When are you coming, Dad?" And he said, "I'm not coming." And in disbelief, I said, "You're not going to the funeral?" And he got mad, Nikki. He said, "I do not need to go to a funeral to honor my dead son."
This is Safe Passage, where we invite you to explore the internal journey of transformation and change.
Whether it's relocation or retirement, the birth of a child or the loss of a loved one, life invites us, sometimes forces us, to evolve.
So where do you turn when you feel stuck or unsure of what's next? I'm Doug Ota.
And I'm Nikki Muller. Welcome to Safe Passage.
One of the first things we learn as children is how to say hello and how to say goodbye. And as adults living in an era of copious disruption and change, some of which we initiate ourselves and some of which happen to us at increasing speed from all directions, it can feel exhausting to fully experience an ending and acknowledge that goodbye means that we're losing something or someone. Very likely, when we're in the midst of a transition in our life, something is ending or has ended. Whether we're saying goodbye to a place, a person, or a life we once lived, endings take us out of our comfort zone, no matter how many times we've gone through it before. And I love what transitions expert William Bridges writes, that a transition begins with an ending and ends with a beginning. It's so tempting to rush through that ending and make a beeline for the new, but if we don't get good at goodbyes, we eventually do ourselves and others a disservice. A truly fresh start comes from honoring what is ending and what we are losing before creativity and renewal gives us a real chance to begin again. Doc Doug, in your framework, Positive Transitions Care, which, by the way, already resonates so strongly the moment I saw it, because we know the word transitions is hard, it's difficult, but right off the bat, you stated your claim, Positive Transitions Care, and I absolutely loved that course. And one of the things you write about, of course, is that there are 5 laws, major laws to transition. And law number 1, you've attributed to David Pollock's famous words, which are, you have to say a clear goodbye in order to say a clear hello. And you continue by adding, you have to grieve well to leave well. I absolutely love that. But do tell us more about what you mean by this and why it's so important.
Well, I think the first time I heard David say that, I recognized this is really important. I don't totally understand it. And the second version of it rhymed, of course. So
I love
it's
that
catchy
too.
and rememberable. It's just true. And I guess the way I've come to understand why it's true and explain it to other people is almost by thinking about those early rings of our sort of metaphorical inner tree. If you think about yourself being a tree, and trees have rings. And you go all the way back to those early rings, the so-called inner child. Yeah, when I'm in a serious mood, I talk about him as the inner child. If I'm more flippant, I talk about them like our minions. Yeah. Like those, the little yellow creatures that live inside us. And they're kind of all looking up and sort of wondering if people are paying attention to them. And if you're not saying a goodbye to something that really does matter to you, and the minions are kind of watching, and they're going like, but, this person's important to us. Why aren't we saying goodbye? Or, yeah, but we're sad about this. Why are we acting like we're not sad? Then they kind of all go like, And if that happens to them over and over, they start to kind of think, well, it doesn't really matter what we think. This fact that this hurts inside doesn't apparently get seen by even our boss. And so they're practical. Minions are very practical. So is our inner child. And when that next hello comes, they might go, well, hello. But they're kind of thinking, well, nobody's going to pay attention to me when you leave and when I'm sad about that. So I'm not going to stick out my hand as as far as I used to. It's going to be a little closer, and then it's going to be a little closer, and it's going to be a little closer. And I guess this is why David was right when he said that. Our inner lives are practical. We can try to kid ourselves, but they know how we feel, and they're going to act accordingly. Yeah.
Yeah, I really tend to agree with you on that. And so when I took this Laws of Transitions course, it was the first time in my life that I really gave myself the space to be fully open to what you and the team were saying and what the research was saying about saying a proper goodbye in order to say a clear hello. That was the part that I didn't really understand before, was in order to be open to receive new connections, or for someone to receive that new connection from you, you both have to have done the work of completely acknowledging what no longer is in order to be fully open to receiving a new connection, which is what we want out of life. People need people, right?
Or doing, are we ever done? But if you're engaging with the process.
Yeah. And I think grief in a way is a key word here. And I know you write about this often. You've written about the repulsion factor, that we are deterred by this word, because of course, grief is what a heavy word. We do feel like we need to recoil and repel from this. It carries a lot of weight. Sometimes it might just be too much and too overwhelming. And Ruth Van Rieken, of course, writer, researcher, and someone I consider to be the godmother in a way of the third culture experience.
She is.
She is, right. She described her highly mobile childhood as a continuous meal of loss. When I read that, mamma mia, something inside me just lit up and said, that's exactly it, right? Because of course, when I moved around a lot, and others who may have done so as well, you miss the little things, the sights, the smells, the sounds, and she terms that hidden losses. And maybe one day we'll talk about hidden losses in transition. But it really is that consistent making and breaking of meaningful connections that I think, and I'm sure you agree, are the hardest to deal with. And for me, the majority of my goodbyes, they happened during my childhood, as tends to be the case when you do move around a lot. And there were several, but I think the ones that really stick out for me were my parents' divorce, moving to the different countries, and therefore losing those great friends. And we often say, yeah, we'll stay in touch, but it's never quite the same. You know that, right? I think we've all felt that, and it's never quite the same. Even now with internet, it isn't the same, right? What is it? It's that it's the human touch. It's the human connection. It's being able to infer what they're thinking and feeling in the little sort of micro movements, right? It's never the same.
And not skipping what everybody recognizes is hard by putting those phrases that we've all used, and many of us still use regularly, we'll see each other, we'll stay in touch, when a large part of you knows that's going to be hard or even unlikely. Yeah, but it softens, or at least it appears to soften the loss. But I think you and I are talking today about whether that's an entirely good idea.
Yeah. Yes, it is that. And so full disclosure, one of the other things, or two, I would say, is, what was most difficult in that young age was losing two of my aunts. So not one, but two of my aunts by suicide. Both of them I was very close to.
My goodness.
And yeah, it was difficult. I was 16 when I lost Auntie Sandra. And I do know that at the age of 16, that is when my nervous system shut down.
Wow.
And we often hear that some of the most difficult things around suicide is not being able to say goodbye. And I only recently attributed my stress-induced gallstone attack that I had at the age of 16, go figure, but I only recently attributed that, as in 2 years ago, the penny dropped, that I probably had that as a result of that compounded stress, right? The stress of loss, the stress of unresolved grief and unspoken goodbyes. And honestly, it's only through understanding transitions and the real need for that support during our in-between states, when your world has been turned upside down for whatever reason that has happened, that I fully acknowledge that I had stopped saying goodbye since I was 16. That's a big deal.
Wow.
I had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. My guard was up for 20 years, Doug, until I stumbled across your work.
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped.
You're giving me goosebumps sharing this, Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. It's not easy, I know.
No, but it's super important. It's what I do. It's what many people do. It's what more of us need to do. It's what I need to do more often. I'm like, I said to you before we started this podcast, I wanted to listen to you more today in episode 4. Because Auntie Sandra at age 16, and something you didn't say is how people, it's not just you don't get to say goodbye, but oftentimes this kind of loss is shrouded in a kind of quiet, a kind of secrecy, a kind of even shame. We're not going to talk about this. And it just disappears, quote unquote. And of course it doesn't. And the way your body, our bodies hate stress. Our bodies hate prolonged, unrelenting stress. It was meant to be a quick activation thing. And you got slammed then on top of all the moves you'd already made and on top of your parents' divorce at what age?
7.
Yeah. So, and something that you're highlighting right at the beginning of our early episodes is how this stuff about moving isn't only about moving, and perhaps it's not even mainly about moving. All goodbyes are linked together. I always think about our minister when I was young saying, he didn't say it to me, he said it to my mom when my stepdad died, but grief is a necklace and all the beads, connect. As soon as one gets touched, you're just feeling the entire necklace. And whether that's the loss of just a good friend when you were 7, or your aunt or your parents, or things in your adult years, I know for myself, they're just all there right in the room again.
Mm-hmm. You did mention that in one of our chats, right? That one negative experience or one experience of loss triggers all the losses and has the capacity to do that. And you're absolutely right when you say that it is sort of united and thread together in one necklace. You can't just compartmentalize, as much as human beings love to try to compartmentalize. And I have several friends who go, this is how I'm coping right now, and I need to do it this way. I understand intellectually it is not the healthiest, but right at this moment, this is my strategy.
And just to say, that's perfectly fine. It's at least many countries in the world are still free countries. And this will hopefully always stay within the personal choice domain. But that can make the most sense to do it that way too, as long as you're being honest with yourself. And the intention is to come back to this when you have gotten unpacked on the other side in your new house and the kids are in school. But oftentimes, as we know, it's an excuse to ourselves. I'll get to this. I don't have time right now. And then eventually those minions from the beginning of our talk, they come knocking. It's okay if there's 10 of them. It's okay if there's 100 of them. But when there's 200,000 of them outside your door, they come and collect, as I know only too well. But that's a future podcast.
I'm writing all this down every time you say it's a future podcast, because I'm like, okay, we've got to touch on this. This is interesting. It's juicy. But no, I completely agree with you. In fact, I think if you say goodbye, or at least you've had enough goodbyes happen over and over again in your life without the proper awareness, at least some people are aware that say, I am parking this. I know it's not healthy. I'll get to it hopefully soon. But if you don't actually have the proper awareness and those healthy strategies, it can get difficult or almost impossible to cope. And I think that is where the danger lies, right? Because we decide to just stop saying goodbye, the way I did when I was 16. I think it was subconscious, but my body said, we're done here. We don't go here anymore. It's too much. Let's focus on the future. And I think there is a big difference between saying the word goodbye and then somatically really actually feeling it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Each of us, and only each of us, knows whether we're being fully honest with ourselves. You can often tell if somebody's not. But even when somebody appears to be being honest with themselves, only they really know. Right? We're both smiling as though we recognize that one.
Oh, yes. Where's that song? Where do I begin to tell?
I don't know, but keep going. Don't end there.
To tell the story of how true a love can be. What was it?
Wow. What is that?
You know what I mean? Shirley Bassey. Yeah. So I always quote it's an old song by Shirley Bassey, and every time someone, we talk about something that opens up a can of worms that I am very familiar with, I go, where do I begin?
And that is a future podcast too, where you sing that actually for real.
Okay, we'll go there. But we talked about saying the word goodbye is a great step. Meaning it and doing something about it is a whole other process. And one of the things you talk about in your book are the different ways in which we look away from goodbyes. And all of them, I ticked them all. I said, oh, I'm good at that. I'm good at that. I do all that. And perhaps as you give us some examples, some people might say, yes, I've done that from time to time, or that entire book is me. And I'm wondering if you could share some of the ways we tend to look away from goodbyes.
Like a lot of things in mental health, and Freud was, I think, the first one to say that every happy family is happy in the same way, and unhappy families are all different in millions and millions of ways, badly paraphrased. But I'm trying to say that healthy approaches oftentimes are pretty simple, straightforward, not very even interesting, and our capacity to find less healthy and creative ways of dealing with the stuff that we'd rather not deal with is limitless. Sorry. Just as a practicing psychologist, the ways that you see people coping with life in ways that aren't necessarily good for us for the long term is immensely creative. And that's not because any of us want to do things that aren't good for us. You're trying to find workarounds because the way you would have preferred, namely to have your feelings be seen, soothed, heard, and helped to feel safe, those didn't reliably work over and over again. And so you had to find what we call secondary strategies for helping your attachment system. So, yeah, addictions. You can be addicted to anything, whether it's a substance or a job, a game, or even just staying busy. All the things we can do to fill up the space so we don't feel. And this world that we live in now doesn't help with its attempt to cram more into the same and to cut, according to Moore's law, the space into twice as much space at least every 3 years. More and more efficient, faster and faster and faster. That's all from a feelings point of view, which did not evolve in a digital landscape. Complete nonsense. Those minions, again, are sitting around going, you going to have time for me today, Dad? Mom? Nope, too busy. The second minion, it's a chorus the next day. What about today? Nope, maybe next week. And we've been talking about how you can just keep kidding yourself, and you have a pretty big bank at your disposal. It's called the bank of the body. I would attribute my thinking about this to Gabor Mate in his wonderful books, but the amazing ability to keep borrowing more and borrowing more, and your body is a vast reservoir of loaning. It's the giving tree, that famous book, The Giving Tree. It'll give and give and give, but at a certain point it hits its limit and a symptom appears. And this isn't the only reason why a symptom appears, but we do know, just to be clear, we health problems happen. That's not necessarily anybody's fault or doing, but we do know that internalizing our feelings, our difficult feelings, and just burying them with no real intention or ability to unpack them in the future takes a toll. And I think, to your point, that's why a gallstone appeared for you. That's why depression has been a visitor for me. And they've all been minions, I think, knocking not only on my door, but quite frankly, on my ancestors' doors. You can answer it? No. We'll let the next generation take care of it. Well, how about now? Nope. It's for the next generation. Not because anybody wanted to screw, excuse my French, the generation down the lines. They didn't know. And I'm not a big believer in human progress in the sense of like the latest inventions, but in my field, in the field of understanding how people work and what human beings really need to thrive, there's vast improvements that continue.
Yes. When you're talking about the body and how it does store some of the more difficult emotions and the stress that we may not deal with effectively or healthily. I always say your issues are in your tissues. I heard that once, and because it rhymes, I said, yes, that makes total sense.
Do you know who came up with that? That's wonderful.
It is good. I'm glad you like that. I don't know, and I need to look that up because
Wouldn't
I know.
Be surprised if it was Mate.
Yeah, it could very well be, and I'll check that. But I really believe that, right? And this beautiful book, Your Body Knows the Score.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that's certainly it. It's certainly what happened to me and perhaps manifested for you and for countless others. And one of the ways is, yes, looking away by getting busy, as you say, or not acknowledging that a goodbye is coming up, that an ending is coming up. And, sometimes we disguise it as something positive. We try to focus on the positive, right? And we've talked sort of about how if a move is coming up, or you're bringing your family and you're bringing your kids, and they're feeling scared and anxious, we talk extensively about the future and not discussing what's going to be different or what they will miss or what they will lose. They'll talk about, but it's going to be wonderful. You're going to meet so many new people.
And that's
right?
a great example right
focus.
there, Nikki, to your question. What are the coping strategies people use? That's one of them. Trying to focus on the crest of the wave. Look how high that wave is going. But the only reason there's a crest is because of a trough. They go together hand in hand. They're inseparable. And a lot of people thought I was a negative person in the beginning of my career doing this. I think I'm as far from a negative person as there is. I also wouldn't say I'm a positive person. I try to just embrace it all, not always successfully. But you don't get the positive without the hard. You don't get the hard without the positive. And so when parents, teachers, anybody, kids are focusing only on the good things, it's really important to think about, what else are they saying to themselves and to others? Are the hard parts, the challenges allowed to be there? Or is this focus on the positive an attempt to shield one from looking at that stuff? Because it very much can be. But when it's a both and process, like most things in life that are mixed, then you're on a magic path. Yeah, I know it's going to be hard, sweetie. And there's going to be wonderful things. And we're going to ride it all out together.
You did say that was one of the most important words in the English language. I remember you said, and. It can be both. And it is both. Most likely it's several things. And just to acknowledge that both are equally important and both will happen.
You know what I actually learned recently, and I've been meaning to look into this, is that the and sign, the ampersand, used to be part of the regular alphabet.
Really?
In earlier English and
yes.
the antecedents of English. I have wanted to look up that claim to know it better, but I just say it now because it is interesting. And the person who said that was making the same point that I'm making, that it's such an important word. And we tend to think, especially these days, in or terms. You're either with me or against me. It's this binary black and white world that we're moving more and more towards, and it's not healthy.
Yes. And you're talking about the origin of the and sign. I just remembered something that I heard, and again, I'm a terrible journalist. I can't attribute where I heard this or where I read this, but the origin of the word goodbye in Old English is God be with ye. And over time, it got shorter and shorter. And now we say goodbye. Isn't that interesting?
That makes a good sense. In Spanish, it's adios, to God.
There you go. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So it's beautiful, right? And no matter how you look at the word, goodbye can mean so many things to different people depending on their life experience. But one of the things that's definitely coming up and brewing in our chats here is what happens when you don't face the difficult parts, right? And grief, of course, is completely natural. It's completely human. We all experience it. Nobody is exempt. Goodbyes are sad. Goodbyes are hard. But that sadness does not need to last forever. Where it can last forever and get really dangerous and difficult is, of course, unresolved grief. So it's only recently that I started to make the difference or understand the differentiation between grief and unresolved grief, right? Because that's the insidious part. That's the part that affects our mental health, our physical health, our emotional well-being. And I know very soon we're going to start talking about our attachment systems fully and go into that in depth.
We actually already are. It's right here in the room. Yeah.
Right? Correct. Like how you open up to new relationships and connections is completely dependent on whether you acknowledge some of the difficult times or you've had support during that time. And one of the things that's come up when it comes to unresolved grief there's various contributing factors, right? One is that lack of awareness. Right. So we get so used to things ending that we almost get numb and we turn away. Right. We don't give it the attention and the energy and the time anymore. Lack of awareness. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is permission to grieve. And I think that's what we were talking about. And what you had alluded to, right, is allow the and to be there. Allow for that space. Giving yourself and others permission to grieve. So how do we do that? How do we give ourselves, others, whether it's children or colleagues, for whatever the reason the ending might be? How do we give ourselves and them the space to do this in a way that's healthy and manageable? Because some people can be terrified of having to face goodbyes now, especially if it's accumulated over time. They might feel like, boy, this is a Pandora's box.
And it is, because
oh dear, it's true.
Well, like we said about the necklace, if you do start to lean into the feelings around one item of grease, don't lean into grease, into grief.
Yes.
See, even I'm avoiding the word.
Mm-hmm.
Then your body knows, your psyche knows there's all these other interlinked episodes, memories that I haven't yet gotten a chance to deal with. And it's not a swimming pool, it's not a lake, it's a very vast ocean, which can feel overwhelmingly dangerous to get near, and not without reason. So I don't want to alarm you or people, but I do want to give this the respect that the topic deserves, the respect that the ocean deserves. I don't think told you, Nikki, it's a little bit in the book, but I grew up in the ocean. I don't think that's an exaggeration. We lived up the street from it, and my first memories are in the water and in the vast Pacific Ocean, and the currents that could pull you right down the beach and sometimes off the beach, and knowing from an early age the dangers of riptides and how to read them and how to cope with them. And I never really realized, I think until my 50s, that in some ways it was a metaphorical training right from the very beginning of dealing with the issues that I have set out to deal with and help other people deal with, including all the messy stuff that happened in my attachments. You talked about your aunt. By the way, you only talked about Sandra. I would like to hear about your other aunt, too. I don't want to lose sight of her. That would not be right, given the topic that we're talking about.
This is true. I should acknowledge that at some point. Because I was very young there. Absolutely, I was 12 when that happened. Yeah.
Well, we'll swim over to that buoy. I just wanted to mark that buoy when the time is right.
Yes.
But these themes are as big as the ocean, and you approach the ocean with a proper degree of humility You know your place. Anybody who goes into the ocean with some pride that they know everything that they're doing and they're in control, they're up for some unpleasant surprises. And I think the same is true for these themes of goodbyes. And the reason why it's important to approach carefully is for the same reason that you'd want to go into the water with a good teacher. And if you're out in big surf, you'd kind of hope that lifeguards are nearby. And I think of the work that I do both in private practice and in this transitions world in very much the same terms, that because I often got lost on the open seas, because I sometimes found myself drowning, because I had the good fortune to survive that and to learn from it, and maybe also the tenacity and the determination to try to figure out what happened, not just last week, but in this entire life. It's afforded me a chance to develop a way of thinking about this that I often do compare to swimming lessons, which can be helpful because we can learn how to swim. In fact, we already know how. We came into the world being able to. And if you do just trust and you hold your breath, you will float through
You are so right.
these feelings and on these feelings. But what it requires to get to the topic that you pointed at, and I think this is maybe the background theme of our entire podcast, Nikki, is the importance of attachment and attachment security. If you know that somebody's with you on the water, somebody who knows what they're doing, whether that's your mom or a good therapist or a book that you find that guides you, or an organization like Safe Passage Across Networks, or anything where people seem to know what they're doing on the high seas, then it gives you the comfort and the confidence and the safety to try to venture out a little further and feel the things that you still feel. And I would say that's kind of a metaphorical summary of how I think about all my work and what we're doing, quite frankly. I wouldn't want to try to give a quick answer to people about, to your very understandable question, how do you do this? In a nutshell, though, it's find somebody who'll go with you. And if that's hard because of what you've learned, in other words, you've learned that people don't go with you, or you've been told by Western individualistic society, you have to figure it out yourself. Real people figure it out themselves. Know that you've been told a lie. Know that millions of years of your DNA don't agree with that. That people who ventured onto the plains in the African savannah with the idea of, I got to go catch this buffalo by myself, that saber-toothed tiger, they're not here anymore. The people that are here are the descendants of people who leaned into each other, and our bodies still remember that that's what they want. And when they get it, they relax.
Yes, I agree. I really agree. And as we get older, this whole idea that, when you're an adult, they know all the answers, they'll figure it out. But then you actually become an adult and you go, well, that's a lie. I actually need help. And how often do we really ask for it, intentionally ask for it, to say it out loud, to realize it, or to go to the right people or who might be able to provide that support. So I just wanted to say that your work and that of SPAN, of course, and David Pollock, Michael Pollock, Ruth Van Reken, the countless of folks that I've come across in the past few years is actually...
And psychology in general, and the Enlightenment in general, right? And the Renaissance. We've been climbing out of the Stone Age for a while. Just to be fair, okay? Yeah.
Yes. But I was going to say that it was leaning into that from my experience, right? That's how I started understanding what was happening. The fact that my life had a series of unsupported transitions. And so the way I jumped into this topic was through your work and that of others. And of course, down the line, you realize, oh my goodness, this has been studied since time immemorial, or at least since the early 50s. And like you say, psychology has really gone in depth. But after all that, I started to realize, you know what? You can learn to get better at goodbye at any age.
Yes.
This is not a hopeless case. That's the whole point of this.
You can
right?
learn to get better at any age.
Yes.
I would say. At goodbyes is a very frequent reason why people get stuck, but that can be around anxiety too. It can be usually around any of the challenging feelings. Note, I didn't say bad feelings.
Fair
but
play.
Just the challenging feelings.
Yes.
Fear,
yes.
sadness, even anger.
You reference that, I'm shifting gears just slightly, but there's a reason for this, so bear with me. But you do reference that the high degree of turnover at international schools is a case in point that we are simply not designed to make and break deep connections over the course of a single academic year, only to repeat that cycle again the next year. But we really can apply the same insight to our modern day workplaces, right? Where our colleagues, our managers, we've built solid relationships with them, and somehow they seem to be coming and going more often. And we really shouldn't take that for granted because we spend so much time with them, sometimes more time with our colleagues than we do our own families. This is something I've actually spoken about through various companies and organizations. I'll go up on stage and I'll go, raise your hand if you spend more time at work with your work friends, and some people joke, my work wife, my work hubby, right, than your own family. And reluctantly, but majority of the hands go up. So this is a big deal, right? And we've talked about, or not we, but everyone's talking about this VUCA world, right? The VUCA, volatile, unpredictable, complex, and ambiguous. And I recently heard that framework is now changed to be called BANI, right? Brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible. This is happening at compounded speed. This is the state of the workplace, and business is personal, right? Business is always personal. So I'm wondering for you, because in your practice, I'm sure all sorts of folks come through your door. And I'm just wondering from your standpoint, without naming any names, of course, but just the observations of, with the tremendous amount of loss that's going on and the number of endings, whether it's layoffs, whether it's divorce at increasing speed now, I'm wondering if this has come up in your practice. Are adults dealing with, or maybe not dealing with, goodbyes and endings so well nowadays?
Absolutely. I would say we're all struggling, but that's because we're increasingly in the process of sort of picking apart the threads of society and community that have held us together for so long. What was it? VUCA and
BANI, B-A-N-I.
The brittle and anxious, I would say is the result of the VUCA. We're not meant for volatile, unpredictable. We can handle it to a degree. That's what our stress systems were designed for, was to be able to cope with a challenge, deal with the challenge, and then return back to the clan, to the cave, settle down in safety, and recover. And there wasn't necessarily a battle every single day. But that rhythm of going back and forth into stress and into recovery, into stress and into recovery, how many people are taking these toxic devices with them to the dinner table, into bed, reading the news, staying up on chats, Instagrams, getting bombarded by everybody else going through volatile, brittle, anxious. And it's not good for us. And so I think that's all the symptoms that we see in psychological private practice or in hospital settings. They're all symptoms. And if we quite frankly could get back to some of what we know in a more basic way in our DNA, I think we'd feel better and our bodies would be healthier. And again, these are arguments from people who are bringing the body back into psychological health, The body's not something that's along for the ride while it carries our head
That's a
from
great
place
way of
to
putting
place.
it. Yeah.
It is a vast storehouse of wisdom, and it's trying to communicate with us, but we need to take time. It doesn't, the body, feelings move slowly. And you can say, okay, I find it mind-boggling that some people I really respect, again, they will remain nameless, but there are podcasters out there that, talk about the 2-minute start to your day. And that's better than no minutes. But if it implies, as I fear it does, that this can be done quickly and in the spirit of efficiency, it doesn't agree with my experience of my own feelings and emotional well-being, that I have to slow down to get to its pace, not the other way around. They teach us, your kids talk to you when they're ready to talk. You don't sit down with them as dad, mom. Okay, talk now. It's in the car. It's when you're washing your dishes. It's when you really think, I don't have time for this. Mom, our feelings do the same thing. But that requires time, and that's not a bad thing. How about spending half an hour with yourself every day and saying, hey, minions, how you doing?
Yes. And it gets, it's true. Even in the Calm app that I use all the time, you'll see it goes, oh, quick mindfulness break. It's 1 minute. And you go, okay, that does feel good. But just because you did 1 minute of mindfulness doesn't mean that you've uncovered the work, because like you say, feelings take time. Our bodies are slower to react to what is happening or internal, I should say, our internal world is slower to adapt and to react and to understand what's happening versus our physical bodies that could be moving at a fast pace. And the change has already happened, but the transition, that part is taking a long time, right? And we brush it off.
It was the great marriage and family therapist researcher, John Gottman, that first said, I heard him say that it's our livers that require a certain amount of time to clean up the stress hormones that get produced by these daily stressors. And the more stressors that get produced, and the more glucocorticoids as they are, cortisol, I think is the long-lasting one, the longer our livers need to filter that out of our bloodstream. So these stress levels drop. They go up quickly, but they drop slowly. And you might need on a bad fight with your spouse, a kid, you might need a 30-minute walk to actually really get down to some kind of thoughtful baseline. You might even need several hours or even a day. So go take that walk, but don't always to say, I'll be back. Our spirit of attachment.
The Gottman method, yes.
Yeah.
I will be back. I will do this. I need the time I need. And
calm down.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For myself, when I think about goodbyes, it tended to be a routine and a disconnect, right? I got so used to twice a year. I was living in England with my mom when my parents divorced and he moved to the Philippines. So twice a year, school holidays, I'd see my dad and my extended family. And I got used to, okay, here it is. It's coming. It's hard, but you're going to do it. And you've done it before. And you do that twice. And they were always sad, right? But one thing I remember, and I only thought about this recently as I was preparing for this conversation with you, was that my great-grandmother, and so I was very lucky. Eventually, I did live in a home with four generations of women. Great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, myself.
Fantastic.
4 generations of women.
That is amazing.
It is. And we'll talk about that because there's a whole episode of home and what that means and family. But my Wawa, we called her Wawa, my great-grandmother, she always insisted that on the day that Mom and I would fly, that people and family would come around to her room and we'd all sit and have a chat and have tea. And she would always give us this. It's not a carnation. It could be a magnolia or a lily, just this beautiful fresh flower that was in a corsage, and we'd wear it on our wrists. I mean, it looked expensive, like someone went into a lot of effort to get that done. And every time we flew, we would wear this, and she'd take us to the airport, and it was this sort of mindful, symbolic gesture as
That is so
as a
beautiful.
bon voyage. It's a beautiful tradition, right? And I looked it up today. I said, what's that about? And apparently it started in ancient Greece, where people would wear flowers or would be given flowers as a form of protection on their long journeys. And we've seen this kind of evolve, right? Now, I mean, maybe it brings up prom for some people, right? The corsage that you'd wear at prom or weddings or homecomings. And certainly in Southeast Asia now, it's really as a symbol of travel and, funnily enough, new beginnings. So it was always trickled there. You know, it was there. The fact that she had recognized, this is important. This is not easy. We're here for you. We will miss you. We wish you well. That ritual of goodbye was actually there in my life, but I just wasn't aware. Of course, I was so young. I didn't know, why am I wearing this big flower? Everyone's looking at me at the airport, right? But it was just so interesting to kind of remember that again. And yeah, I'm wondering what your take is on maybe some meaningful things that we can do for each other. Or maybe you know of something, or you have a ritual with goodbyes. What's your take?
There's many, as old as the ages, and that's one of the more beautiful ones that I've ever heard. And there's something about bringing that fragrance of that relationship too with you, that you can lift it up to your nose. There's a sense of sort of floral continuity that you can just check in with over the days that fragrance lasts. And then, of course, it fades, but slowly, and just as this constant, beautiful, round reminder. It's also a beautiful circle, right? I think of Black Elk's words where he said, the power of the world works in circles and everything is trying to be round. And that, to your point, from the Bridges quote at the beginning of the seemingly paradoxical, the ending is a beginning and the beginning is an ending. I think that's a beautiful tribute to that very quote from your grandmother, was that? Yeah. Gorgeous.
Yeah. And so if we look at goodbye, if we were to say, what are some of the small gear shifts that we can take? I mean, your time, obviously, your clinical practice, your years of counseling at American School The Hague, you completely understand the transformative power of saying effective goodbye. So what does it look like? What does it feel like in practice?
Hey, I just also want to say that my real training is not in all this, is not as a psychologist. It's not even as my time in the international schools. It's as a person, because I too grew up with people who didn't know how to say goodbye when there was a profound need to know how to do so.
I hear you, by the way. This is, we're similar in that respect. And it makes me think of, and I don't know if you'll laugh, but there's this movie that came out, Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt. This is where they first met. It was called Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And they're sitting in a counselor's office, and they're talking about the marriage issues. And there was one line that Angelina Jolie said. She said, "It's like this room is filling up with all the things we don't say to each other." And I was younger when this came out, and I went, why does that sound so real and so relevant? I don't have a partner. I've never been married. And I think it's what you're saying. It's when life teaches you that sometimes there are things we can talk about, or there's no one who's talking about it. And so you decide not to engage in that conversation, even though you really need the help, right? You're right. Life has been the biggest teacher.
First of all, how prophetic that they had that scene in that movie. I'm going to have to go and see that. Put that aside.
Yes, this is true.
And I want to comment on our psyches, our psychology, and use yours as an example right there. You were aware, like, this sounds familiar. We oftentimes can't be told things directly. If somebody comes at us directly, like a parent, a teacher, you need to learn your lesson or something like that, or I'm just trying to help you, it's too frontal, and oftentimes people will become resistant. But a story that comes from sideways, or it's in the form of a metaphor or a parable or something, it's like, that's why we are storytellers. That's why they're conveyors of wisdom, because people can listen to them because everybody likes a good story. And then they're like, this also sounds familiar. But what's happening in your psyche there is so interesting. And this comes from attachment theory and Mary Main's work at Berkeley. And I had the privilege of studying with her and learning this powerful tool that maybe we'll talk about someday called the adult attachment interview. But the psyche, if it's hiding things from you for your own good, you can't remember that. It wouldn't be a very effective hiding maneuver if the psyche said, okay, we're putting this over here. Because then you'd be like, well, what's over there? So our psyche goes like, look, and it goes like this. And then every once in a while, there's this sense like there's something over there. It's that same feeling you get when you leave the house and you know you've forgotten something. And Malcolm Gladwell talks about that in Blink, and it's about the wisdom of your GI tract, the millions of neurons that you have lining your gut, which are seriously a primitive form of thinking. We do think with our guts, and very smartly, by the way. And your gut was noticing, I think there's something over there, but you weren't quite ready, maybe. You didn't feel, your psyche also knew you didn't have the holding yet, for example, of being a successful adult like you are now, having your own place, all these things, blah, blah, blah. And then you can go, I wonder what that's book's about, for example, and you start reading about it and because you're strong enough to go, oh. If you weren't strong enough, you'd go, no. You'd look away. And you start to get into the water.
Yes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? Something like that.
Wonderful, right?
Yeah.
So this conversation started because you asked, where did I, like it was about like my training and time in international education. And I was referring to my family and our inability to deal with the big feelings as I grew up. Nobody knew what they were doing with the big feelings. And a story I just want to share with you, this is maybe also for a future podcast, but in the spirit of you sharing about your aunts, and that invitation stands to bring that up, your second aunt, when you feel the time is right.
Yeah, I think a conversation around sort of loss and death is important because we've all experienced losing someone close to us.
Yeah.
So I think that's a massive transition that we all have had to go through. So I think it does warrant another conversation. But I am curious to hear what you wanted to share just now.
Okay, it's when my brother died and I was 31. And speaking to my father, who lived on the East Coast, and my brother had died on the West Coast, I was getting ready to catch an airplane, of course, to go to the funeral and help prepare it. And I think I asked something like, when are you coming, Dad? And he said, I'm not coming. And in disbelief, I said, you're not going to the funeral? And he got mad, Nikki. He said, I do not need to go to a funeral to honor my dead son. Very much in that Japanese way. And that was one of the many things he taught me about this topic. And the lengths that people will go to not have to look into this material. And that had everything to do with him and the amazingly stacked up, piled up, immense cargo of unresolved loss with which he moved in the world and passed on to my brother and to me. So that was my real training. He did end up going, just to share that with everybody. And a story I have told before, and this is of a father who thought my career choice was, at least he certainly appeared to think it was nonsense. Why in the world would you go study something like psychology, be a counselor? Never said anything positive about it until that time he did come to the funeral. And I took a walk with him. And at the beginning of the walk, in silence, he breaks and says, Douglas, this is going to make you a better psychologist.
Wow.
That was the only thing he ever said about any of this with regards to anything real. And he was doing the best he could.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something for me when I think back in terms of parents and how they may have communicated or not communicated or been supportive and vice versa, is yes, they are doing the best they can the way that they know how, the way that they've been taught, the way that they've experienced. And some people would love to turn things around and change, but it's very hard to do that when you haven't had an example, right? But this is going to make you a better psychologist. That validation of this is hard, this is important, and your work is important.
Yeah.
And this is going to be an incredibly significant part of your journey.
Yeah, I haven't actually.
Oh my goodness.
I haven't actually let myself feel that in the depths you're helping me feel it, Nikki. So thank you. That was actually the biggest affirmation that he could have ever given.
What was it? How did you, when you first heard that, did it feel very much left field? I mean, did you want to walk away? Did you want to lean in? Or was it just a blur?
All of the above. Because this was also a man who, anytime I tried to get near a conversation about big feelings, as you can imagine, somebody like me would have had an inclination to do in my 30s, in my 20s, in my 10s, even when I was a kid, he'd get mad.
You'd get mad.
So this was a gift, and I didn't dare ask for more. I didn't dare explore it. I thought it was, I think, I didn't think this consciously at the time, but I think I knew instinctively that this was just incredibly generous.
Thank you for sharing that, Doug. I think that is very beautiful. And what I'm loving about these conversations are we go in different directions, but it's always with trust and respect, and I'm getting to know you better. And we realize that, your work is different to my work. Everyone around us, we're actually a lot more similar than we think.
I want the audience to know that too, that we are getting to know each other.
Yeah.
We've spent maybe 8 hours, 7 hours with each other now. We had a couple of getting to know each other meetings. Yeah. I didn't know these things about your aunts.
And I still haven't met you physically. No. I haven't met you in person. No. I haven't come to The Hague, No. And I'm looking forward to that chat because we're going to do it. And I think we record it and then we have a chat together in your living room.
A bunch of them.
Really fun.
Super.
Yeah. But thank you. I am a firm believer in trusting my gut and also timing. And when Mona Stewart, of course, who's on the board of SPAN, kind of brought us together, and I know we have yet to talk about the sabbatical, and we'll get there one day when you're ready. I know you'll tell me when you're ready to have a chat about that. But when she said, hey, it could be that you and Doug have a journey together. And I thought, and I think I told you this, I said, I was really starstruck. I was like, you mean Professor Doug, the one who taught me the laws of transitions? He wants to talk to me. And I just trusted the timing. I said, well, I'm trying to figure out my next right move. I'm in the midst of transition. I go, well, who better to talk to than someone who has lived it since he was young and who really leans into this. So it's been really, really great. And I really look forward to our chats together.
We're having so much fun.
Yeah.
And just for the record, too, when I watched your presentation at the SPAN Symposium, I was like, oh my, OMG. And
thank you.
And then that you wanted to do a podcast, professional you wanted to do a podcast with, quite frankly, little me, who I had thought about doing this for a long time. And then just like, is it going to work? Is it going to take off? And then you're coming from the production big leagues. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this really could be something. And I think I was the first to reach out formally to you, but that's only because, and it took a long time, and that's because I didn't have the gumption, and I wasn't ready yet. And boy, am I glad that both happened and that we're doing this. Huh?
I am too. And what was interesting is you and I started talking. Oop, that's my alarm to tell us we're coming to an end. But I'm going to give it 5 more because I think we've been really good. We've done an hour. I can give it 5 more. But I just want to let people know that when we started talking, I was about to leave Singapore. I was just about to pack up my life of 15 years and move to Zurich. And that's why I said, we're going to do this now? And I go, actually, this is the perfect time, is right now. Whilst you are in the throes of multiple transitions, speak about it, be open about it. Don't let it settle in. Journaling is good, but saying it, right? Vocalizing it would be really great. And it's been wonderful. And I wanted to let you know that this time around, after taking the Laws of Transitions course, after hearing what SPAN talks about in terms of really being mindful of an ending so that the new beginnings can be authentic. I was pretty strategic and hyper aware and conscious this time about that Singapore ending happening. And if you think about it, I was 25 when I arrived. I was wet around the ears. I moved in the middle of a financial crisis and left a secure job because, hey, why not take the risk? And then I leave at 40. I'm just coming into that middle age where things are beginning again in a new direction. And I realized, I made a lot of great connections and wonderful people, whether it was professional or personal. So the way in which and I've never talked about this out loud yet, how did I prepare to say goodbye to my life and my world of 15 years, knowing now how important effective goodbyes are after having been around this space and for a while. So I gave myself 6 months, just a number, because I'm very lastminute.com, Doug. Like really, if I'm not in the red, then I'm not going to do anything. I'm usually very lastminute.com, but I knew in this case, that's not how you feel the feels because it takes longer. So I gave myself the 6 months before flying. I didn't leave it to the end.
That's good in the David Pollock spirit, because he also said, right, it takes 6 months to pack up your heart and 6 months to unpack your heart.
Yeah. So it just made sense. I was like, I'm leaving in the summer. Let's start facing this. Let's start acknowledging it earlier than I usually would, because that's my MO, lastminute.com. And yes, I spent quality time with friends. And what I did was I didn't just thank them for their friendship, because I honestly believe that a key ingredient and component to an effective goodbye is actually gratitude. You look at the things that you were losing, but the reason why that hurts is because they meant something to you. So gratitude is an essential component in an effective goodbye. And so when I thanked people, I was very specific. I didn't just say, thank you for being a good friend. Thank you for your friendship. I said, thank you for that time when you made me feel this way. I really needed that. I never thanked you then, and this is how it's helped me. And I could see in people's eyes, I said, well, this is unusual for avoidant Nikki. They were just like, who are you? Hello, knock, knock. Who's this person sitting in front of me? And I went, thank you, SPAN. Thank you, all the work. Thank you, psychology, everything. I really wanted to be specific. And the final thing that I did, and this was really a la Nikki style, right? I love to perform. Yes, I present, but Singapore was a place that allowed me to take on professional roles in theater that I had never thought that you could do because it was just high school. But there is where I really learned to dive into roles. And so I thought, what can I do that's very me, as a sayonara, as a farewell to Singapore? I didn't
know this about you.
Yeah, it's the several hats that I've been wearing. And that was huge for me to be able to channel all the feelings and experiences in a way that was relevant to whoever outlet. Character. Yeah, creativity. You're so right. So I said, I'm going to have a farewell concert. And I did this at a great jazz bar called Cool Cats. And I called it It's a Wrap. Of course, a film term, which I thought was apt. And what really stuck out was the people who came out of the woodwork in that small jazz club. I did a few shows. I said, geez, I haven't seen that person in over 10 years. And is that a former client that I haven't worked with? The people who came and the feeling of, I guess there is a shared understanding of your time here mattered. You are important to us, and vice versa. And every single song was really a thank you. It was a thank you to Singapore. I even wrote a farewell Singapore card, and all the things I was grateful for, the good and the bad, because they were all important. Good and the bad. You wouldn't have said that. Challenging and not so challenging.
Nikki, this is absolutely phenomenal. I am learning so much about you. I did not know that you sing for real.
You see, people have responded in that way, and then I go, yeah, but it's once in a while. And they're like, Nikki. In fact, Adrian Pang, who's a very renowned actor in Singapore, and his wife is a fantastic director, and I've worked with him several times. Whenever they'd say, you're an actor, and I go, oh, no, I don't have formal training. You guys, they go, no, Nikki, you are. Just put that down. You get paid to do this. We want you here. You deserve a seat at the table. I've always been very apprehensive to accept myself as a creative person of note, that I don't deserve to be in this space because I didn't go do it at school the way all these really professional people did it at school. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you for saying that. And I should stop going, oh yeah, but it's small. No, it was significant. So significant that it was my symbolic goodbye to Singapore. My way of saying thank you, right? So and so I really was mindful of it, and I felt confident now that I was able to move forward because I sort of ticked all the boxes emotionally and the ways in which I did it. But the hardest part was the house, the final home. It was the first home that my husband and I had together, so I knew this was going to be difficult. But you know what, Doug? When all the boxes were in that container and it was a shell, it didn't feel like home anymore. And I realized, oh, wow, home is not, the home doesn't make us, we make the place.
It's a feeling that you created there, huh? Yeah. It's the total sort of, you can't quite say whatedness about what you did right there. Well, to your point about gratitude, though, there's many who've, I think, described it as the highest of human feelings, the most beautiful to feel and to receive. And I'm so, for lack of a better word, just impressed by how you thought up something that works for you. I've never heard somebody talk about a goodbye, basically set of concerts, a gift to the place, to the people. You just wanted to spread your fragrance to anybody who would show up. If it was 10, fine. If it was 100, fine. And you're like, oh, and they showed up because there was a connection and there was an opportunity to validate the connection. And you were so intentional about it. It's a great illustration for people about finding a way that works for you to honor.
Yeah, that it's possible.
Not
and
just
also
the people. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Not to just honor everything. Honor your own feelings, honor theirs, honor the connection, and do it in the spirit of generosity and gratitude. Yeah. Wonderful.
Thank you for that. And that really kind of is my point of what I said earlier, that it's because I've exposed myself to this space and to folks like you and the work of many others before you, that I realized you can get good at goodbye, slowly but surely, at any age. And so it's so interesting. I never told anyone what I was doing. And I don't even think I've told my husband this. I said, these are the little things that I did, because for me, it is a huge deal. If you have stopped saying goodbye for 20 years, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, through work and through conversation and through awareness, you realize maybe it doesn't always have to be the old way, then hopefully this can help others as well.
And being mindful of the water that you've maybe backed up behind a dam, and that you need to let that out slowly and thoughtfully and carefully, and maybe with some guidance from friends or people you trust, even a therapist. right?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And this is perfect, I think, for us to really close. I was hoping you could lead us in a mindfulness practice as per. I really love this tradition in our chats about, things that we can say or think about when we want to get better at a proper goodbye.
Yeah, I got a good one for this that's brief and it's safe. And it's maybe in the spirit of strengthening what works, like your own flotation ability. And it's not so much thinking about the goodbye, but about the people who help you and the people who have helped you and the people with whom you have felt safe and secure. So just briefly, let's do an exercise that's called security priming. It comes from Phil Shaver and Mario McCullencer's work in attachment. Great book if you want to read about sort of attachment in broad terms. Attachment, Structure, and Dynamics, I believe they published in 2016. And security priming is about this idea of not activating all of the memories of loss that we were talking about, that necklace, that everything's connected. That sense of connection is true for anything in our nervous system. So feelings of anxiety, times we were mad, but also the one we're going to use now, times when we felt safe, secure, a feeling of well-being. And if you're using your nervous system for one thing, it's not able to be used for something else. Your nervous system is a garden. And if you're cultivating roses, they're taking up space that the weeds might like to claim. So let's cultivate some roses. My stepdad grew roses professionally, so it's a lovely thing to be able to share that fragrance too. So just go inside yourself, folks, and I'd like you to think about somebody, anybody where you felt a time in your life where that person was just there for you. You felt like that person just got it. And it was so nice. And it might only have been just a look. They maybe just sat with you and said nothing, because oftentimes that's all we need. Just presence. It could have been a coach. It could have been a teacher. It could have been your mom. It could have been an uncle. It could even have been a place where you could just go, and in that place, you felt this awareness, it's gonna be okay. The place, the person, the setting said to you, I've got you. This is hard, and I've got you. This is hard, and I'll go with you. All we ever need is just a sense that somebody's going with us. It doesn't necessarily solve the practical problem, but it does solve the emotional one. We are not meant to do these things alone. If you find that doing these things that Nikki and I are talking about is hard, it could be because of the additional hardness on top of the things that are already hard, namely this idea, this crazy idea that Western society gives us, that you have to do it alone. You don't. Nobody ever did. Nobody can. It's a misnomer that's developed in the Western world. Our bodies want to do it together. So Nikki and I join you right here at the end. If you can't think of anybody else, you've got us. That's part of what this podcast was about. Our supportive space, our supportive voice, telling you we're here in this space where things sometimes are really hard and really beautiful things happen because roses grow in manure. From the bad comes the good. From the hard comes the beautiful. It's all part of the same thing. And thinking about our security, people and places, helps us deal with the hard things. So until next time, that's our little gift to you at the end of episode 4.
And a gift it is indeed, and a gift you are indeed, Doc Doug. Thank you very much. My heart is lighter. Can you imagine? I couldn't have imagined saying, hey, we're going to do an episode of goodbyes, and I'm going to leave that chat feeling lighter and brighter. Thank you very much, Doc Doug.
And that's proof of what we just said. We did it together.
We did it together.
If you had said all of the exact same words the two of us just said, or I, as one lengthy monologue, we wouldn't wish an hour and 28 minutes on anybody like that. Don't worry, it'll never happen. But you wouldn't feel better.
Really appreciate that. And to those of you listening, thanks for coming on board with us. And we can't wait to see you next time. I just hope that this has been helpful. And hopefully next time, rather than looking away, perhaps you'll find it just a little bit easier to lean into that transformative power of goodbye. Thanks so much for joining us on Safe Passage. Till
Thanks,
next
folks.
time.
Bye.